He'd lost his right hand in the war, though no one cared which side he fought for any more. Dust swallowed the borders now. Flags didn't mean a thing when cattle died in the thousands and men shot each other over buckets of brackish water. They called him Broken Boone behind his back. He didn't correct them, let them say what they pleased. Boone had a hook for a hand and a scar that ran from ear to jaw, wide as a thumbprint. His right eye didn't blink right. Folks said he stared too hard, that he looked through you. He never explained it was because he couldn't quite see you, that the glassiness in that eye wasn't anger but blindness. He stayed quiet. Most things weren't worth the breath. After the war, he bought land no one wanted, far out near the ghost reaches of cold Sable Ridge. Used to be Cheyenne land, but the tribe had been pushed out, or killed off, or both. Boone didn't ask. He built a cabin from salvage and taught himself to farm one-handed, wheat, goats, chickens. The work was dry and thankless, but it kept him alive. What didn't keep him alive was the silence. By his 37th winter, Boone had a pile of bones in the barn from dead goats, 3 missing toes from frostbite, and no teeth on the left side from a fight over seed. He'd slit a man's throat with the sharpened edge of a tobacco tin. Still, it wasn't enough. He wanted something warm, something that didn't bleed out in the snow or buck when touched. So he sent a letter. Cost him a horse and half a sack of coffee beans to pay the stagehand who ran letters up north to the mail-order agency in Chicago. He didn't ask for love, he asked for quiet, a woman who wouldn't cry, who wouldn't scream when she saw his hook, someone pale and plain, strong enough to lift a goat if it got sick. He included no photograph, just wrote. I have land, tools, and firewood. I eat alone. You'll eat too. Don't expect words or warmth, but you'll live. 2 months passed, no reply. Then one dawn, a stagecoach wagon creaked into the clearing by his fence. It dropped a figure in a brown dress and bonnet, didn't stop long enough to let her say goodbye. She stood like a stone while the coach vanished back into the horizon. Boone stepped out onto the porch, eyes narrowed, grip tight on his belt. She didn't speak, just watched him chin high. She was not pale, she was not plain. And she looked him square in the ruined eye and said, My name's Marin. You bought a wife, mister, but what you got is a woman. He did not answer. She stepped up, dragging a bag behind her. He turned and opened the door. She followed without asking. He expected her to shiver at the cold, to shrink from the scent of goat piss or flinch at the axe heads nailed into the walls like warning teeth. She didn't. She went to the hearth, laid her hand over it. Then she said, You keep the dead out with this fire, or you keep yourself in. Boone didn't answer. He sat down. She did too. That night he didn't touch her. He didn't say more than 3 words. Eat, sleep, chickens. She took the cot near the window. He stayed by the door with the shotgun across his lap. The wind howled through the chinks in the walls like wolves laughing at the edge of their world. In the darkness, she whispered a song under her breath, soft and in a language Boone didn't know. He didn't sleep, but he listened. And for the first time in 3 years, he didn't dream of dying. By morning, Marin had skinned a rabbit and scrubbed the floor with snowmelt and lye. She didn't wait for instruction. She didn't ask where the knife was, found it by scent or instinct, and when Boone came in from the coop with blood on his boots, she didn't blink at it. He wasn't used to that. Most people turned away or tried to soften him with nervous talk. She did neither. She moved with the calm of someone who'd lived with worse, and Boone knew worse when he saw it. Her hands were strong, but the left ring finger was crooked, badly healed from a break. Her boots were second-hand, heels worn uneven. She had a small burn scar on her collarbone, shaped like the lip of a kettle. They didn't speak of it. They didn't speak at all. Days passed in cold rhythm. Feed, fetch, patch, split. Boone worked the field with his one hand and the mule. Marin boiled every root she could dig and started a little row of herbs on the sill. She didn't ask for thread or books or paper. She didn't ask for Boone's past, nor offer her own, but she watched everything. When he sat by the fire scraping his stump clean, she watched. When he rolled his shoulder after lifting too much, she watched, not with pity, just with note. On the 12th day, she brought him a strip of boiled willow bark and told him to chew. He scowled. She stared. He chewed. The pain dulled. He didn't thank her. She didn't need thanks. That night, snow blew hard enough to rattle the roof loose. Boone bolted it down. When he returned, he found her standing barefoot by the open door. He grabbed her by the wrist, hard enough to bruise. "You want to die." She didn't flinch. "I wanted to feel it." "What?" "The wind. I've been kept inside too long." He released her. She didn't leave. Instead, she made a pot of bean stew with dried meat and wild onions. She fed him first, then herself. Not a word exchanged, just the soft sound of spoons against clay. Winter thickened. Ice formed inside the window glass. Boone had survived 4 winters alone, but this was the first time he didn't welcome the silence. Then came the blizzard. 3 days of no light, just snow and howling and the groan of old wood under weight. The roof bowed. The fire sputtered. Marin lay on the cot, fevered. Boone touched her brow and felt the burn. He'd seen men die slower from less. He knew no healing beyond fire and whiskey, but he remembered the willow bark, and the herbs, and how she'd watched everything. He searched her bag, found a pouch of dried petals and bark shavings. He brewed them into a bitter tea and fed it to her drop by drop. She shivered, moaned once in sleep, and survived. On the 4th morning, the storm broke. Boone shoveled snow until his breath came in heaves. When he came in, Marin was sitting up, eyes clearer than before. "You stayed," she said. "I don't leave things half done." She smiled just once. It changed her face. Made her look younger and older at the same time. That night he sat beside her cot instead of the fire, and when she fell asleep, she turned toward him, not away. He didn't touch her, but he didn't look away either. And somewhere under the crust of frost and bone and broken things, something inside Boone began to warm. The thaw came late that year. Trees split under the weight of ice that wouldn't let go, and the creek stayed frozen past March. Marin wore a man's coat Boone found in the shed, patched at the elbows and stiff with age. She wore it without apology. She started to laugh, not often, not bright, just a dry, short sound that caught Boone off guard, like a match struck in the dark. Once it happened when the goat head-butted his leg and he fell into the mud. Another time when he burned the cornbread and tried to hide the blackened bottom. She never mocked. Just smiled that crooked, knowing smile, like she'd seen worse men make bigger fools of themselves and live through it. Boone didn't laugh, but sometimes, when she looked away, he almost wanted to. By April, she had a garden dug behind the house. Beans, beets, something sharp and green that stank when broken. She didn't explain what anything was, and Boone didn't ask. He built a fence around it, drove the stakes deep. She nodded once in thanks. She took to walking after supper, never far, just along the ridge behind the house, past the bleached cattle bones and the stump that marked the old boundary line. Boone watched her from the porch, shotgun across his lap. Something about the way she moved unsettled him, not fear, but memory, like the ghost of someone he'd never met but almost recognized. One night she came back with a coyote cub in her arms, its paw twisted in an old trap. Boone stood. "You bring that here." "It was dying." "That's the point." She ignored him, laid the cub on the hearth, splinted the leg with a whittled stick and goat sinew. The animal snapped at her hand once, but she didn't flinch. "You going soft on things?" he asked, voice flat. "I've had worse teeth come for me." "Why bother?" She looked up, "Because it ain't dead yet." Boone didn't argue. The cub stayed. Grew stronger, limped after Marin like a shadow. Boone started calling it thief, though he never said it in her hearing. Then one night riders came. 2 men, hard-eyed and hollow-bellied, strangers from downriver. Boone saw them from the ridge as they crossed the fence line, slow and careless like they'd done it before. He loaded his rifle. Marin stood beside him, not asking, just watching. "They looking for food?" she asked. "No," Boone said. "Looking for something easy." They came to the porch with loose grins and empty holsters. One carried a rope, the other a jug. "Evenin'," the tall one said. "Heard you got company these days. Thought we'd come welcome her." Boone didn't move. The short one spat in the dirt. "She got a name, friend, or just a price?" Boone raised the rifle. Marin stepped forward. "She's got a knife," she said. They laughed. Then she showed them. It wasn't a big knife. Just a skinning blade, black with age and honed thin. But the way she held it, flat, low, edge forward, made both men pause. "You got one chance," she said. "Turn around and don't come back." "You don't speak for him," the tall one sneered. She didn't look at Boone. "I speak for myself." They hesitated, long enough for Boone to raise the rifle to his shoulder. The tall one's face changed then. Something in his eyes saw the line he'd almost crossed and recognized it too late. They left, slow, bitter. Boone didn't lower the rifle until they were past the trees. Afterward, he poured a shot of whiskey and handed it to her. She drank it without blinking. Then said, "You would have killed them." "Yes." "You've done it before." "Yes." She looked down at her hands. "So have I." He didn't ask when or where. He just sat beside her, close enough their shoulders touched. Thief lay between them, limp and warm. Neither of them moved. Outside, the wind changed, and for the first time Boone realized he didn't dread the sound of it. Come May, the world softened. Creek ran clear. The mule kicked less. Wildflowers crawled through the fence slats like they'd been waiting for a signal. Boone didn't trust it. Nothing ever came easy that didn't want something worse in return, but Marin took to the thaw like it was hers by right. She washed every blanket they owned in the stream, cut her hair with Boone's whittling blade, short, rough, clean at the jaw. She didn't ask if he liked it, just said, "The wind sees me now," and left it at that. He built her a chair. Not fine, but wide and low, with slanted legs and a curved back. She didn't speak when she saw it, just ran her fingers along the edges, then sat in it every dusk like it had always been hers. Boone found himself fixing things before they broke. He started whittling pegs for a fence she hadn't asked for, started checking the traps more often, made sure the door hinge didn't stick. He never explained it, couldn't have. But there was a stillness that settled when she sat in that chair, and he wanted it to last. They were sitting there one evening when she said, "My husband died on a Monday. Took 2 days for me to believe it." Boone didn't look at her. "He used to say I wasn't fit for the plains, too soft, too slow. First winter, he locked me in the smokehouse for mouthing off. I slept standing." Still Boone said nothing. She stretched her fingers out in the sun. The crooked ring finger caught the light. "I buried him behind the barn, made sure the pigs got his boots first, then I left." Boone didn't ask if she killed him. He didn't need to. Some truths were like rot. You didn't see it, but the stink told enough. He said, "You think they'll come looking?" She shook her head. "No one looked before, no one'll look now." He believed her, but that didn't mean they were safe. One morning they found a hawk nailed to the fence post. Wings spread, beak broken. Boone stared at it. Marin didn't blink. She said, "That wasn't random." "No. You know who." Boone nodded once. "There's a man west of here. Runs the salt pits past White Hollow. Keeps boys on leashes and trades women like mules." "What's his name?" "Kane Velt." Marin's eyes narrowed. "That's not a name, that's a threat." Boone agreed. He knew Kane, fought beside him once. Kane had saved his life in the war, then tried to sell him to a raiding party 2 weeks later. Kane didn't kill for pleasure. He killed for coin, then wrote prayers over the corpses in his ledger. That kind of man. Boone and Kane had parted ways under gunfire and curse. Now Kane was sending messages. Marin said, "He want me. Wants what I've got, thinks I forgot how to fight." "And did you?" Boone looked at the nailed hawk, eyes steady. "No." That night they buried the bird beneath the cedar out back. Marin said a few words in a language Boone didn't know, something old, sounded like stone and rain. Boone loaded the rifle with new powder, cleaned the spare pistol. Marin sharpened every knife they owned. She looked up once, caught his eye, and said, "If he comes, we don't run." Boone didn't smile. "Running never worked," he said. That night Thief growled in his sleep. Boone sat by the door, hand on the rifle. Marin didn't sing, and neither of them slept. Kane came at dawn, the way men do when they want blood before breakfast. 6 riders, dust-gray coats, faces wrapped. One of them dragged a sled of chains behind his horse, slow and clinking like a warning. Boone saw them crest the rise and didn't blink. Marin was already up, sleeves rolled, braid tucked tight. She handed him the short-barrel pistol she'd oiled the night before. He checked the chamber without speaking. Thief darted behind the goat shed, ears flat. They didn't wait inside. Boone stood in the yard. Marin beside him, blade tucked in her belt. Her shoulders were straight, feet planted. Boone thought she looked more like a tree than a woman, something deep-rooted, shaped by wind. Kane stopped 10 feet from the porch. He didn't dismount, just looked down at Boone with the lazy smirk of a man who's cut too many throats to count them. "Well," Kane said, "you got uglier." Boone didn't answer. Kane leaned on his saddle horn. "I've been hearing stories about a one-handed bastard with a patch of land and a knife wife who don't scare easy. Thought I'd come see for myself." "You saw," Boone said. Kane's eyes flicked to Marin. "She's prettier than I expected." Marin's hand moved, just a breath. Kane grinned. "You always did like strays." Boone stepped forward. "Leave." Kane shook his head. "You owe me, Boone. You walked off with half my gear after Cold Creek. I want that back, and her." "No." Kane tilted his head. "You planning to stop us with half a hand?" Boone said nothing. Marin said, "He don't need both hands to kill you." The man to Kane's left spat. "This bitch talked too much." Before Boone could lift the pistol, Marin threw her knife. It hit the man in the throat. He gurgled, fell backward off his horse. The yard exploded. Gunfire cracked like dry wood. Dust kicked. Boone fired twice, dropped the sled dragger with a shot to the eye, winged another. A bullet grazed his ribs, burned cold. Marin had vanished behind the shed, reappearing behind one rider's flank. She drove a second knife into his thigh, pulled him down. He landed hard. She stomped his throat with the heel of her boot. Kane turned, wheeled his horse, drew his long gun, but Boone shot the reins from his hands. The horse reared. Kane fell, then it was over. 4 men dead. One crawled away toward the trees, trailing blood. Kane on his knees, gun lost, face cut from the fall. Boone stood over him, breathing hard. Kane looked up. "You won't do it. You never could." Boone raised the pistol. "I'm not the same man," he said, but he didn't fire. He lowered the gun. Turned to Marin. "You want it?" he asked. She looked at Kane like she was seeing a pile of rot, then at Boone. "No," she said, "that's not mercy, that's memory." Kane flinched like he'd been struck. Marin crouched beside him. Pulled a scrap of cloth from her pocket, pressed it to his face, not gently. "You ride back," she said. "Tell whoever waits that this place is fed, it's warm, it's not afraid." Kane spit blood. She stood. "Next time I kill you," Boone said. Kane didn't answer. They let him walk. Afterward, Boone sat in the chair he'd made for her, Blood on his boots, smoke in the air. Marin poured water over her hands, scrubbed the blade clean. Neither spoke for a long time. Then she came to him, took the pistol, and set it on the porch rail. "You didn't have to spare him," she said. "I know." "Why did you?" Boone looked at her. "You reminded me what it felt like to live." She didn't reply, but she sat beside him. And when her hand brushed his, he didn't pull away. Behind them, the wind carried the scent of blood and lavender, but for the first time it didn't smell like war, it smelled like choice. Summer hardened the land. The creek slowed to a trickle, and the garden curled at the edges, stubborn against the heat. Boone built a second coop, sturdier than the first. Marin trapped rabbits by the ridge and laid their pelts to dry along the fence. Thief watched it all from the shade, half wild and scarred, but loyal now, like the rest of them. They didn't speak much of the day Cain came. The dead men were buried in a gully behind the cedars. No markers, just piled rocks. Cain's name wasn't mentioned again, but Boone kept the rifle loaded by the door. Marin never walked the ridge unarmed. One night, after they strung mosquito netting from the rafters, Boone woke to find her standing barefoot by the window, watching the stars. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She didn't turn. "Can't stop thinking." He waited, wasn't just Cain, she said. Was others, men like him, before him, after. Boone nodded slowly. "I thought if I kept walking far enough, I'd outrun the shape they left in me." Boone looked at her silhouette, sharp against the glass. "You did," he said, "but they left something else behind." She turned then, face unreadable. "Like what?" "Fire." She didn't answer, but she crossed the room slowly, like testing new ground, sat on the cot beside him. Her hair smelled like ash and salt. Her fingers brushed his shoulder. He turned, not quickly, but without doubt. And in that dim room, with only the wind for witness, they shared the kind of silence that no longer meant fear. It wasn't soft. But it was real. By August, they had a rhythm. She took the traps, he ran fence lines. They smoked meat, traded eggs for nails and salt at the Ridgeway post. The world didn't change, but the cabin felt heavier now, not with weight, but with presence. Then the rider came. One man, no colors, just a wide hat and a blood-marked saddle. He didn't make it to the porch. Thief ran him off before he crossed the fence. Boone found a paper nailed to a tree the next morning. Marin Elsie wanted alive, a reward, a sketch, her name printed in hard, unfriendly ink, $50 posted from Dakota Territory, signed by a marshal's hand. Boone read it twice, folded it once. She waited at the garden, face set. "You saw," she said. "Yes." She didn't ask if he believed it, didn't offer details, but Boone did ask one thing. "Is it true?" She looked him in the eye. "I slit a man's throat in the dark. I poisoned another with larkspur tea. They called it murder. I called it survival." Boone nodded once. "Was he your husband?" "No," she said. "He was the man who tried to make me disappear." Boone unfolded the paper, held it over the fire. "Watched it curl. You can leave," he said. "I won't," she answered. "You stay, more will come." She stepped closer, then let them. It wasn't bravery in her voice. It was conviction. The difference was quiet. They doubled the watch after that. Boone dug a second blind near the ridge. Marin taught him how to set snares for men, not rabbits. They slept with knives under the cots. When riders passed on the road, they didn't wave. And yet, for all that, there were nights she laughed again. Low, rough laughter, sometimes while shelling beans or stitching up Boone's shirt. Sometimes she sang, too, only half a verse, the words thick with mud and memory. He never asked what they meant. He just listened. Because in the dark of those uncertain months, her voice became the thing that tied him to this world. The last man came in winter. Not a gang, not a gun hand. Just one rider with a federal star pinned beneath his coat and a scar across his mouth like someone had tried to silence him once and failed. His horse stumbled at the gate, and Boone knew the weight of it all before the stranger even raised a hand. Marin stood behind him on the porch, calm, no weapon in sight, though Boone knew the knife was tucked in the small of her back. The man didn't shout, didn't draw. "I'm looking for Marin Elsie," he said. Boone's voice came quiet. "You found Boone's land." "I know," the man replied. The two stared at each other. The air between them was thin, brittle with frost and judgment. Marin stepped down. "I'm Marin." The man looked at her, not with hunger or fear or hatred, just a kind of tired. "I'm not here to drag you back." "Then what?" He pulled a letter from his coat, held it out like it might burn. "Your name was cleared. Marshall who filed that warrant died last month. Someone talked, woman named Eloise from the same town. Said she saw everything, swore under oath, said it wasn't murder." Boone took the letter. "Write it." Marin didn't reach for it. The man rubbed his gloved hands. "You're free, far as the law's concerned." Silence, then Marin said, "And far as you're concerned." The man's gaze shifted. "Ain't my job to judge ghosts." He turned to leave, but before he mounted, he looked back once. "Some folks rebuild their names, some let 'em rot, up to you which." Then he rode off. The snow was deep enough to swallow the trail within minutes. Marin didn't move. Boone handed her the letter. She folded it without reading. That night they ate by firelight. Thief lay curled near the door. The goats didn't bleat once. Boone sipped the last of the fall whiskey. Marin didn't sing. Instead, she said, "What do we do now?" Boone looked around the cabin, the smoke-black rafters, the shelf of dried herbs, the boots by the door and the rope-bound chair he'd built with a busted hand. He said, "We keep living." Marin nodded slowly. "Not running." "No. Not hiding." Boone looked at her. "We earned this land." She stared into the fire like it might answer something he couldn't. Then she reached across the table, took his left hand, the good one, and held it between her own. He didn't flinch. Outside, the cold groaned through the trees. Inside, the past burned low and steady in the hearth, not gone, but softened. Boone never asked where she came from again, and she never asked what the war had taken from him. They both knew it didn't matter. The world would always break things, tear them from the bone, but now he had a reason to hold on. And she, after all the bleeding and silence, had finally found a place that didn't need her to vanish. They weren't saved, they were surviving. And in this corner of frozen land, where mercy had once seemed like a luxury, they made something harder. They made it a choice.